Hi Reddit. I'm Trevor, 30. This story starts with a sentence that still echoes in my head over a decade later. Time to man up for real, my dad sneered, right before shoving me out of his truck and driving off. He left me there, middle of nowhere, in the woods. No phone, no map, no clue where I was. I was 18. That was the last time I saw him for 12 years. Now he and the rest of my so-called family suddenly need my help. But before I get to that part, I need to go back to how this all started. Because I want to be honest with you, Reddit, I wasn't always the guy who could handle something like this. I had to become him. Growing up, I was never the ideal son. I wasn't sporty like my older brother Marcus. I wasn't tough like my dad. I liked reading, writing, music. Soft stuff according to him. My dad thought masculinity came from pain and punishment. The guy's idea of bonding was throwing Marcus into a frozen lake for character building. He didn't hit us. He didn't have to. His weapon was disappointment, silence, disgust, especially with me. I tried to keep the peace. I worked jobs through school, stayed out of trouble, made okay grades. But nothing was ever good enough. I remember once I got a summer job at the library. First real paycheck. I was proud. He laughed and said, "Books won't feed your family. Maybe try doing something real." When I turned 18, I thought things might change. I'd been accepted to a community college across the state. I told my parents at dinner. My mom smiled. Marcus nodded. My dad, he just chewed slower. The next day, he told me he'd drive me out there. Said it'd be a chance to talk, man to man. I was stupid enough to believe him. We drove in silence for almost 2 hours. Then the road turned to gravel, then dirt, then nothing. He pulled off into some logging trail in the woods. I asked what we were doing. He cut the engine, looked straight ahead. "You're not ready," he said. "You're soft. You think life's about books and feelings." I started to speak, but he got out, walked around, and flung the passenger door open. Time to man up for real. Then he shoved me out. He didn't yell. He didn't hit. He just got back in the truck, reversed down the trail, and drove off. At first, I thought it was a test. Like he'd come back in a few minutes laughing, call me a wuss, and drive us home. But 10 minutes passed. Then 30. Then an hour. He didn't come back. No phone. No signal. I had nothing but a bottle of water and the hoodie I was wearing. I wandered, panicked, screamed. It was getting dark. Eventually, I found a ranger station the next morning. Guy working there looked at me like I was a ghost. When I told him my name and what happened, he called the sheriff. They called my parents. And my dad? He said I'd run away after an argument. I didn't go home. I didn't even go back to school. I just disappeared. Worked odd jobs, stayed in shelters for a while, until I found a warehouse gig that paid enough to get a room. Eventually, I built myself up, took online classes, started freelance work, built a small business. It took years, but I never stopped, and I never forgot, because every dollar I made, every client I won, every success I earned, it was one more nail in the coffin of the person my dad said I'd be. I never contacted them again, not until now, 12 years later. Because last week, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a note in my mom's handwriting. "Your father's sick. Marcus lost the house. We're in trouble. Please. He regrets what he did." Regrets. That's rich. But I'm not the same scared kid he abandoned in the woods. I've changed. And now they want my help? Yeah, Reddit. I'll help all right. But not the way they're hoping. After I read the letter, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt cold. Because all the things I used to feel about my family, hurt, longing, that little spark of hope they'd come around, it was all gone now. But curiosity? That survived. And I'll admit it, part of me wanted to see them squirm. So I packed a small bag, booked a rental, and made the trip back to the town I left behind 12 years ago. It hadn't changed much. Same cracked sidewalks, same diners and hardware stores. Same smell of pine and diesel. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to see the look on their faces when I showed up on the doorstep. The house looked tired, paint peeling, front steps uneven, a dead lawn where mom's flower beds used to be. For a second, I thought maybe they had moved. But then the door opened, and there she was, my mother. She gasped the second she saw me. "Trevor." It was weird hearing my name in her voice again. She looked older, thinner, tired in a way that no amount of sleep could fix. I didn't smile. "Got your letter." She hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Come in." I stepped inside. It smelled like dust and reheated soup. Same furniture. Same chipped dining table. It felt like I was walking into a frozen memory, except all the warmth had been sucked out. I turned the corner into the living room and froze. There he was, my father, laid out in a recliner, blanket over his legs, oxygen tank beside him. He looked nothing like the man who abandoned me in the woods. He looked small, weak, but I didn't feel sympathy. Not even a flicker. Just emptiness. He looked up, took a rattling breath. Trevor." I stood there, arms crossed. "Guess it's time to man up again, huh?" He blinked. Didn't say a word. Didn't have to. Mom stepped in. "He's been sick since last year. COPD. Can barely leave the chair most days." I nodded once. "So why now?" She hesitated. "Marcus, he lost his job. And the house. He was staying here with the kids, but the bills piled up. Insurance doesn't cover everything." I looked around. No sign of Marcus. No noise. "Where's Golden Boy now?" Her eyes darted down. "He's out. Looking for work." I raised an eyebrow. "Still using your credit card, I'm guessing?" She flinched. Didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. "Let me get this straight," I said, stepping forward. "You let Dad dump me in the woods like trash. Didn't report him. Didn't even check if I was alive. You ghosted me for 12 years. But now that your precious Marcus can't pay for your house and Dad can't breathe without a tank, you want my help?" She teared up. "Trevor, I'm so sorry. We thought we were doing what was best. Your father, he thought you needed toughening up. He thought wrong." Her lips trembled. "I know. We were wrong. I was wrong." I didn't reply. Because apologies this late? They feel like paper after the fire's already burned the house down. We sat in silence for a while. Dad tried to talk again, but every word was broken by wheezing. He looked like he wanted to say more. But honestly, I didn't care. I wasn't there for closure. I was there to see how deep the hole they dug really was. And let me tell you, Reddit, it was bad. Unpaid property taxes, late utility bills, medical debt in the 5 digits. I went into my old room, still had my name on the door, by the way. Ironic, sat down with a pile of papers and skimmed through every ugly detail. They weren't just broke. They were drowning. And Marcus? He wasn't just looking for work. He was out of state, hiding with a friend. Hadn't sent a cent. Wasn't answering calls. Classic Marcus. Mom made dinner that night. Tuna casserole and store-brand soda. We ate in silence. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Will you help us, Trevor?" I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of soda, and smiled. "Maybe, but it won't be for free." She froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean you'll sign over the house to me. All of it. Legally. I want it in writing. You two can live here. But everything from now on goes through me." She stared, like she couldn't decide if I was joking. I wasn't. Not even a little. She looked at Dad. He nodded slowly. Didn't speak. Couldn't. And honestly, that was the first time I felt anything close to satisfaction. Because the man who once told me I'd never survive on my own was now silently agreeing to hand me the keys to his entire life. And that felt like justice. I stayed the night. Signed the paperwork the next day. Had a lawyer from out of town drive in. Got everything notarized. By noon, the house was legally mine. And that was when I told them the second part. I'm selling it. The silence in the room after I said those words was delicious. I'm selling it. My mom's fork clinked against the plate. She froze mid-bite, eyes wide like she'd misheard me. My dad just stared. What else could he do? His mouth didn't work the way it used to. The oxygen tube hissed in the background like a slow-burning fuse. You can't be serious, Mom finally whispered. Trevor, this is our home. Was your home? I corrected calmly. Now it's mine. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. We trusted you. We let you help us because you said. I said I'd help. I interrupted. And I did. I paid off the property taxes. The bank won't take it. You won't be homeless unless you choose to be. But the title's mine now. So what happens next? That's also up to me. You're doing this out of revenge, she snapped. Damn right I am. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I didn't need to, because the power shift had already happened. For once, I was the one with the leverage. And I wasn't going to pretend I didn't know exactly what I was doing. You remember the day he dumped me in the woods, Mom? I asked quietly. Her lips tightened. You remember how long it took for anyone to care that I was missing? Oh, wait. No one ever did. I wrote you letters, she mumbled. No, you wrote one letter. 12 years later, when your world started to collapse. I grabbed my bag and started for the front door. Where are you going? She asked. Back to my life, I said. I've got a buyer flying in next week. They'll probably tear this place down, build some cabins, or whatever. It's their call. You going to kick us out? Not today, I said without turning around. But don't get too comfortable. Her voice rose. What about your father? He's sick. He's still breathing, isn't he? I shot back. That's more than I thought I'd see after he left me for dead. She went quiet after that. Not because she agreed. Because there was nothing left to say. I stayed in a hotel that night. It was the best sleep I'd had in years. No creaky floors. No passive-aggressive glances across the dinner table. No ghosts of a childhood that never felt like mine. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels like a win. 3 days later, I was back in the city, having lunch with my business partner Jake when I got the first message. Marcus, guess he finally got the news. You're not seriously selling the house, man. That's Mom and Dad's place. You can't do that. I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, we can talk about this. Maybe I can buy you out. Then, don't be a dick, Trevor. They're old. You made your point. The fourth message? That one was my favorite. Fine. Sell it. I hope karma eats you alive. And just like that, the golden boy cracked. That night, Mom called again. I didn't answer. Then she texted, Your dad had another episode. The stress is making him worse. Please don't do this. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I typed. He had 12 years to say sorry. He used 0 of them. Not my problem. And hit send. The next week was chaos. Realtors called, buyers toured, offers poured in. Turns out, a secluded plot near the woods with existing infrastructure? Pretty hot on the market. Especially when someone's already done the hard part, aka me, clearing debts and handling legalities. By Friday, I had a cash offer well over what the place was worth. Enough to put a down payment on something 10 times better. The papers were signed. The clock was ticking. 2 days before the sale was final, I drove back to the house. This time I didn't knock. I walked right in. Mom was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with a dead look in her eyes. Dad was asleep in the recliner, a blanket up to his chin, the hiss of oxygen filling the room like static. Afternoon, I said casually. She turned, didn't say anything. I came to let you know. The buyer's set. Movers are scheduled for next week. You got 7 days. She blinked. You said we could stay until I said otherwise. I cut in, and now I'm saying otherwise. Her eyes filled with tears, but I was done falling for that trick. Where will we go? She asked softly. Don't know. Don't care. I turned to leave, then stopped in the doorway. You know, Mom, I used to lay awake wondering what I did wrong. Why I was never good enough. Why he hated me. Why you let it happen. She looked down. I don't wonder anymore. I don't care anymore. You can both live with your choices. Just not in my house. And I walked out. That night, I popped a bottle of champagne with friends. Not to celebrate revenge, but to celebrate closure. Because revenge fades. But freedom? That stays. A week later, I showed up with the buyer and the movers. I didn't even get out of the car right away. Just sat there and watched from the curb while my past scrambled to hold on to something that never belonged to them in the first place. The front yard was full of boxes. Mismatched furniture stacked crooked on the porch. My mother pacing, frantically barking in her phone. My dad in a wheelchair now, wheezing and coughing every few seconds like he was trying to breathe guilt back into my lungs. But I felt nothing. Not pity, not anger, just clarity. For once, the roles were reversed. The buyer, a clean-cut guy named Brandon who wanted to flip the house into a rural retreat, looked over at me. You sure you're good with this? I nodded. More than good. We stepped out. The movers followed. One of them recognized the place and muttered something about the old Miller house under his breath. My mom spotted me immediately. Trevor, she shouted, marching down the driveway. I didn't stop walking. We're still trying to figure out housing, she said, blocking the path. Your brother said he might be able to get us a place, but Please, just a little more time. I looked her dead in the eyes. The closing was yesterday. Legally, you shouldn't even be here. But your father, he's in no condition to move. Maybe he should have thought of that before throwing his son into the woods like garbage. She blinked. That hit her, but not enough. You're really going to throw your own family out into the street? She hissed. I laughed once. Cold. You mean the same family that didn't care if I lived or died at 18? She glanced at the buyer. You're just going to let strangers take everything? Just like that. Not strangers, I said. People who actually paid for it. Brandon cleared his throat awkwardly. We don't have to be here if you need more time, Trevor. No, I said firmly. Let them see what accountability looks like. He nodded and signaled for the movers to proceed. That's when Marcus showed up. Of course he did. Pulled up in some dented SUV, music blasting, girlfriend in the passenger seat. He stepped out, fake concern all over his face. Yo, what's going on here? You're late, I said. Mom called me. Said you're selling the house. You can't do this. You're about to find out that I absolutely can. He walked right up to me, getting in my face. Still trying to play big brother like the last 12 years hadn't happened. You're being a vindictive little bitch, you know that? And you're still pretending you didn't abandon them the second things got hard. I have kids, he shouted. I couldn't just. You have excuses, I snapped. That's all you've ever had. The girlfriend stepped out, sensing the tension. She didn't say anything, just watched. Maybe she'd heard his version of the story. Maybe not, but she was seeing the real Marcus now. The spoiled, golden child who thought the world owed him something just because he could throw a football in high school. He puffed his chest. If you think this makes you a man, Trev, it doesn't. It makes you a traitor. Funny, I said. Dad used the word man when he left me in the woods. What did he call it again? I squinted like I was trying to remember. Time to man up for real, right? The color drained from his face. He hadn't known. Of course he hadn't. They never told him. I took a step forward, low voice now. You ever asked them what happened to me that night? Or did you just let them say, I ran away, and move on with your perfect little life? He didn't answer. He couldn't, because the truth was in his eyes. He'd known. Deep down, he'd known something was wrong. But he didn't ask, because not knowing was easier. Coward. I turned my back on him and walked up the porch steps. Clock's ticking, I told my mom. You've got 3 hours. Movers are working around you if you don't move yourselves. They did what they always do when backed into a corner. They begged. First it was guilt. Then came fake tears. Then, when that didn't work, the insults. You're heartless. You're not the man we raised. You're just trying to destroy us. And maybe they were right about the last one, because in their version of the story, they were the victims. But in mine, they were lucky I didn't leave them in the woods. By the end of the day, everything was packed. They left with a single U-Haul truck and a box of oxygen tanks for my father. I watched them go, not out of pleasure, but to make sure they really left. Then I walked through the house one last time. The walls felt lighter. The air wasn't so heavy. No more memories whispering at me from the corners. Just a shell I'd finally emptied. Brandon stood beside me, looking around. You sure you're okay with selling it? I nodded. This place died a long time ago. I'm just burying it. As I handed over the keys, I felt it. Not relief, not triumph, just a clean break. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. 12 years after being left in the dirt, I was finally standing on solid ground. And Reddit? I was just getting started. After the house was gone, I expected to feel something. Relief, anger, sadness, vindication, anything. But what I felt instead was quiet. Like my whole life had been a loud, grinding engine, and someone finally cut the power. I spent the next few weeks back in the city, mostly in my apartment, working, running my business, meeting clients, living the life I built from nothing. And in the background, I kept getting messages, voicemails, emails, texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Most said the same thing. You didn't have to go that far. They're still your parents. That wasn't the Christian thing to do, right? But where were those voices when I was sleeping behind a gas station at 19? Where were they when I sent out job applications using computers in public libraries, eating crackers for dinner? Where were they when I had no family, no safety net, and no direction? Nowhere. And now they wanted to act like they had an opinion? They could keep it. But then, something happened I didn't expect. A letter arrived, handwritten, from my father. I stared at the envelope for a long time. It was sloppy, barely legible. My name was misspelled. Inside was one page. Just a few sentences. The handwriting shaky, the ink smudged. Trevor, you were right. I was wrong. I was afraid of the man you were becoming because I never became it myself. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I wanted to say I'm sorry before it's too late. That was it. No signature, no plea, just those few words. I sat with it for hours. Didn't cry, didn't rage, just sat. I don't know if he meant it. I don't know if it was guilt or fear or someone else told him to write it. But I didn't care, because that letter didn't change anything. I wasn't that boy in the woods anymore. I was the man who walked out, and that mattered more than any apology. 2 months passed. I got word through a cousin that my dad had passed away, quietly, in some assisted living facility. No funeral, no service, just gone. They asked if I wanted to come help sort his things. I said no. Let Marcus do it. He was the golden child, right? Let him carry the weight now. I had my own life, and I was finally going to live it. But before I fully moved on, I made one last trip. Back to that trail. The one where he dumped me out of the truck. It took a while to find it. Roads had changed. Trees grown taller. But I knew the feeling of the place. That cold pit in my gut when I stood on that same dirt. I brought a small stone. Just a plain rock with a message etched on it. I knelt down, placed it at the base of a tree. It said, "Here lies the boy you left behind. He survived and became something greater." And that was it. I stood, took a breath. Then I walked away. Now, Reddit. It's been over a year since then. I've got a new place. A quiet home with a garden and 2 rescue dogs. My business is thriving. I mentor younger guys who come from nothing like I did. I never tell them the full story. But when they ask how I made it, I always say the same thing. By choosing not to be the version of myself they expected. Because that's what it comes down to. You don't get to pick your family. You don't get to choose how they love you. Or fail to. But you do get to choose who you become after they try to break you. And me? I became someone who never went back. Not really. Not to who I was. Not to who they wanted me to be. Not to the life they tried to cage me in. I became free. And that, more than anything they ever could have given me, was enough. Thanks for reading, Reddit. If you're standing at the edge of your own woods, wondering if you can make it out, you can, and you will. Just keep walking.